Alusta päälle.
Hello. Can I ask you to take a seat and we will be starting soon? Okay, welcome to the 21st Helsinki Data Science Meetup. It's always great to be here at OP. It's been a couple of years since I've been here, but I used to work here, so I love coming back. This is like coming back to home. I came here to lead the data science work on the Finanssiäly program here, but this has grown so much after I've left, so it's great to be here and hear what you guys have been doing here. I am representing DAIN Studios today. My name is Hugo Jävert. DAIN Studios, very shortly, we're an AI and data consulting company. We do projects ranging from full high-level data strategies to operating model, how to implement the data strategy into practice, to hands-on things with data, building data platforms, building AI use cases on top of that. And we even offer some trainings on AI, what is AI, and so on. We have been growing quite a lot this year. It's been a great ride. We have 2 tribes. I am leading the tech tribe, which hosts the data scientists, engineers, and BI developers, and we have a strategy tribe also. Then a bit about Helsinki Data Science Meetup. We've been hosting this since 2016, and I was checking some pictures back from there, and there was maybe, I could count from the image, something like 26 people there, max 30 people at DAIN Studios at that time. It was very cozy, small event. We were talking about the future of AI. Professor Heikki Mannila was there talking about his predictions for AI. And unfortunately, I don't remember the predictions, but I'm fairly sure that we didn't predict these large language models that we have nowadays. So I'm fairly sure that that's a bit of a, we're going really high somewhere at the moment. Who are we here in this place? We are really the practitioners. We have mostly experts, senior experts from data science, data engineering, but we also have executives here, and we also have students, and that's for me especially very good. I welcome all the students to this community. Of course, we're mostly from Finland, 3/4 from Finland, some 20% from Europe, mostly from German. DAIN Studios has a main places where we work is Finland and Germany. That probably is why we have such a group of people from Germany also taking part in here. But yes, we are hybrid. So when COVID started, we went to online mode, but now we're back in hybrid mode, and I think this is great because, as you can see, the registrations we get always much more registrations that we can accommodate here in these places. Here are a couple of the previous hosts for this. So, like I said, it started originally very small, but now it's has grown a lot. The community has grown, and therefore we have also these great companies like OP hosting this. This is probably the third time at OP, I think. Second. It's a third. We hosted it once previously, and it was already second that time. So, yeah. So it's always great to come here. Like I said, if you want to join this group of great companies and tell about what you guys have been doing and show to the others how you are using AI in your work, then just get in touch with us. This QR code, this link takes you the LinkedIn page or the group of Helsinki Data Science Meetup, and that's the best place to get information of the new up-and-coming events. Then a couple of words about code of conduct, because we have grown. So it's really important to say a couple of words about this. So we don't tolerate any kind of bullying or harassment in here. And these on-premise, what is this? I'm so used to talk about cloud and on-premise. So on-premise events, these on-premise events, these are great. We've never had any problems in here, but also online, remember that be kind and so on. Don't make a mess there. Unfortunately, we have to keep you quiet on there, but there's questions and answers there that you can use to send some questions around to us. Helsinki Data Science Meetup hashtag, use that if you want to tweet and so on. But yeah, be kind, inclusive, and curious about the content that we have here for you today. And I'll welcome Juuso to tell about the content next.
Thank you, Hugo. So welcome, very warm welcome to everybody to here at OP. Again, now I thought it was the second time, but at least the same meetup was here almost exactly 6 years ago. I was there, and on 1 year later I was here working. So hopefully some of you will be working here in 1 year's time. So my name is Juha Vesanto, everybody calls me Juuso. I'm the principal data scientist at OP, and starting from the next year, I'll be heading the new data platform and AI tribe. So that's a group of about 65 data scientists, so we are approximately the same size as DAIN. We are developing and maintaining our data, kind of online data platform in the cloud. We build the AI vision and maintain a roadmap for OP in terms of data science and AI. We provide data science tooling for the whole OP data science community, and more about that later. And of course, more than half of us are working with the businesses, with the technical teams inside here, OP, helping them making reality on the analytics and so forth. So we are very big on productizing analytics here at OP. Hence, our topics today. So we are going to do things a bit differently this time. So the previous meetup events have been more about presentations from the company itself, and those have been great. But just for the sake of trying out something different, we wanted to have voices also from outside. So the theme today is data science best practice. Therefore, I would welcome all the panelists to share their best experiences, best practices on how to do MLOps, to the productization of analytics, and so forth, so that we can all learn from those best practices. Of course, there's no one best way to do anything, but given good examples here and there, we are certain to become better ourselves. Now, the sad news and the great news today is that our key speaker today has fallen ill, so he couldn't make it today. The bad news is that, well, obviously he's sick. The good news is that his topic would have been about data governance or AI governance. So maybe later, maybe when we are, well, have a few drinks and then we will discuss about that. So instead, we'll concentrate more on the second panel, the citizen data science. And I will be giving an introduction on what the journey for OP has been on the citizen data science front, and then we'll continue with the panel discussion where John will then grill me about all of that, because he knows this house through and through. He was also here, working here. Afterwards, we'll have more foods and drinks. And, we are very informal here, so if feeling thirsty or hungry, just, go and grab something. Try not to make too much noise, because people are trying to hear what the panelists are saying, but, feel free. And we'll be ending the event at 9 o'clock. Which means that by 9 o'clock we'll start kicking people out here, and we'll inform you when it's time to leave. With that in mind, just one more slide, and then we'll go to the main event. So, what is this best practice that we're talking about? Now, we all want to do damn good data science. That's a given. But just doing good data science is not enough to do great data science. So there's all kinds of things that go around the actual data science itself in order to make really good products, really good analytics that really works out in the open, in the real world. So I won't go through those or read out loud those topics, but for all of those topics, we have been trying to formulate some kind of best practices here at OP. How to do data quality monitoring, how to document data, how to maintain models, update models, CI/CD pipelines, all that kind of stuff. It's all about coding, it's about version control, it's about maintaining the product itself, which is the analytics product or data science product or simply a data product. But even that is not enough. Then there's the big picture. There's roadmap. You need to think ahead on where to go next, what kind of technologies there need to be in the future, in a sense, future-proofing your analytics. There's common tools to consider, some kind of underlying in all the technology, but the technology itself is not sufficient. You need to be able to be efficient in an organization, and therefore you need to utilize the same tools, and not just for efficiency from the perspective that you are using common templates and so forth. Also the support, the productization, the monitoring, all that kind of stuff which is really relevant when you go into production. It's much easier when you're using common tools and so forth. So that also needs to be, paid careful attention to. Finally, the compliance part. So the topic that we are not going to talk about today, but still it's very important, and as a bank for OP, it is especially important to pay attention to compliance, to regulation, because as is often mentioned here, it's about, losing the OP brand, losing the license to act as a bank, and that would be the final step on the coffin, in a sense. So what we are going to talk about today, we are talking about MLOps and productization analytics, which covers part of the whole area of best practices. And then we're going to talk about enabling the citizen data science. and we'll also talk about what the citizen data science is and how it differs from the full data science. But with that in mind, I welcome the first panel on the board.
Maybe I'll stand here because I don't know. Let's do. Okay, so the first panel here we have. I'll let you guys introduce yourself, but we have Neelabh from Kone, we have Jukka-Pekka JP from Elisa, and we have Hanna from here from OP. So I'll let you guys. Actually, let's do a roundup. Maybe you can tell your. What you're doing at your companies, what kind of team you are working in, and so on. Let's just do a quick intro round here.
Yep. So my name is Neelabh. I'm the principal data scientist at Kone. So the guys that make elevators, escalators, and automatic doors. So I lead the data science team at the Analytics Center of Excellence that's based here in our Espoo headquarters. So I lead a team of data scientists, ML engineers, and data engineers, and together we are focused on making data available and then also building solid analytics products and making also enabling citizen analytics. So we have a fairly large mission, but a small team, and we're growing slowly. So that's where we are now.
Jukka-Pekka Salmenkaita from Elisa. I'm from the less well-known part of the Elisa International Digital Services, where we do solutions for manufacturing industry, 1,200 or so companies, our customers globally, to the other telecommunication operators. That's maybe a bit easier to guess. In that area, something like 130 operators are our customers, and then some early stage activities in the energy side. And I have been, both part of this international side from the times when we were 5 people, now it is quite many more, and ramping up the data science activities for the whole journey so far. And our approach is that we want to be in the end in a product business, and our products are part of how things are operated. So in the telco context, it's the easier to guess kind of items, so like how radio network is optimized, how service assurance from the mobile operator is done, and how to automate those that it is like 98 or 99 or 99 point something fully automated work. So it's those kind of solutions we are doing, and they are very data heavy and increasingly sophisticated methods used. Of course, there's lots of heuristics and other like domain specific know-how involved, but it tends to be nowadays more and more data science driven, the product advancement. And then on the other areas on the manufacturing, it's systems like semiconductor manufacturing quality systems. That's like one of our specialty and big part of the global semiconductor manufacturing from the quality system perspective is nowadays our solutions. And then electronics manufacturing like supply chain management and so on. So these are items that are not at all related to the connectivity in the traditional operator sense, but they are all about being able to harness the data from different parts of the system, doing the integration to different kind of data sources, and then being able to act in more automated and hopefully also in more intelligent way based on that data processing.
Hi, my name is Hanna Saarinen. I work at OP as a senior data scientist, and I've been working here a bit over half a year. Before that, in different companies, I see some familiar faces from previous companies here, so 10 years of data science experience before this. And here at OP, I work in the Financial Intelligence Center of Expertise, Finanssialy, which was mentioned already. We work, as Juuso mentioned, in different parts of the company, in the different business areas, as kind of consultants inside the company. I've been doing some projects for the businesses, but mainly I've been focusing on developing these best practices for us as financial intelligence and working on the common templates and common practices and tools.
Okay, thank you and welcome all. So our topic is MLOps, and just very briefly about MLOps. So it's about bringing sort of the data or actually DevOps mentality into this area. And by that, I guess one of the key things there is that the development side knows what needs to be done for the operations to run smoothly, and their operations needs to understand that the development maybe wants to bring on new features all the time and so on, so have a fast cycle and so on development. We sometimes talk about data ops, we talk about ML ops. There are slightly different things, at least in my mind, but I'm not going to go into that myself now here. ML ops is, just want to say that ML ops is a bit like undefined. Everybody has maybe their own definitions of what it means to their companies, and many companies are finding out how to do that, what suits these companies well, and that kind of leads me to the first question for our panelists. So if you consider going from proof of concept on an analytical case, from POC to production, and therefore into sort of the phase where you have to do ML ops, can you give a short description of what happens in your companies? Maybe starting with Neelabh from here.
Yeah, so at least within my team, there are a couple of use cases that we've been working on that are now finally sort of at the stage where I could say they are productized, and it has been an interesting journey so far. And to us, I think all of these started as sort of proofs of concept on somebody's laptop, and then I think overall, I would say the biggest challenge would have to be sort of getting access to continuously flowing production quality data to train the model. And also sort of getting acquainted with the automation that goes around sort of smoothly automating every step of that pipeline to produce those scores. And not only that, so once you produce those scores, it's more important for you to measure how those scores are actually used and how they affect business outcomes. So I'd say these are the three main ideas. So that is how we do MLOps at Kone.
Well, I believe a lot in iterative development, and in the very early stages, it's more about like qualifying that the problem is real and it's actually worth addressing. And I think that's actually like really common mistake, that you start solving out something before you actually know whether it's problem worth solving. But like that's the first item. Then like if you know that the problem is actually valuable to be sorted out, you need to have some kind of like proof case, that you have some methodological basis to address, and I think that is the area where most of the data scientists are really at home and like have lots of experience and so on. So that tends to be the very smooth stage, and also area that people by training they maybe do even like over quality too early and like to fine tune things even a bit too much in that area. But then like the third stage is to actually get that into the operational use in some limited practice, just to see whether your assumptions about the real problem and the solution are matching what the reality is. And that can be very different depending on what is like the customer area. And well, we like to say it that we need to have like minimum viable product or solution and a field trial for that one. And how that can be organized depends a lot on like how much control you have to the environment. And it's not easy for example, to get something that is, I take these semiconductor industry cases. Okay, so we have been analyzing and developing new methods for something that's called CMP process. So it's one of the semiconductor manufacturing processes. But the field trial, that one, when it is actually like addressing millions of euros of worth like stuff, it's not so that you are just saying that, hey, we have this MVP and we would like to see how you like test that out in the practice. It's a bit like, yeah, you do first half a year or maybe 1 year different kind of like database simulations and historical data and so on, showing that they believe that it is actually working as intended. And after that, if you are lucky, then you get the permission that in this plant here for this production line we will be setting up. But the requirements to do that kind of field trial, they are equally strict like for the real product. So it is like actually like pretty down time-consuming job to get the customers to be accepting. But that's the stage when you start to learn that, well, what did you actually like know of the real environment and what were all the aspects of the real production process that you were not able by yourself to know, and that feedback you need to take in, and then you are ready to actually do the real product incarnation. But without this field trial aspect, you are like guessing what the product should be doing. And then for the MLOps side,
can I ask on that? So do you mean that the MVP is actually otherwise fully functioning product, except the analytics might be still needing a bit tuning, but otherwise everything needs to be in there?
Well, I don't know any other environment where, for example, like high availability requirements with sub-second like backup are like for the MVP. Yeah, we had to do it. So
yeah. Typical MVPs are not that advanced.
But it depends on the customer like area, and there's like great range. And then for this like MLOps side, like for these two first stages, like is the problem actually important? Well, MLOps has no role except the data ops part. If you are able to get high quality data, you are probably able to work better on the possible value. And then for the second stage, that will have you some kind of like rough idea how to do the problem in that area. If you have as much of the data easily available and nicely standardized, like technical tooling, well, we prefer to use Databricks whenever we can. Like it makes it like so much smoother and less effort setting up and so on. So it's like great efficiency benefits from the MLOps side. But then where we are, I don't know whether it's struggling or whether it's the industries that we have selected to be serving, is that we are definitely not in the situation that we would be able to deploy from cloud. The telcos have their own private cloud items and they are always tiny bit different. It's not the same thing like Azure or AWS or something. There's always something slightly funny and interesting and so on, and we need to be fitting into that environment because that's the environment where our stuff will be running in production. And then in the semiconductor and other manufacturing sides, it's like if it is about the production process, it must be running on the site, and even if all the internet connectivity from the whole country is down, the plant must keep on working. So we are not like nowhere close to pushing the MLOps side so that it would be like deployed or run from the cloud. I know other industries are more lucky here and they can unify, but for us, that's the most important, let's say, challenge, struggle with the MLOps practices.
Technical note, please keep your mic a bit closer.
Yeah, I definitely, definitely agree with what you said about kind of evaluating if it makes sense to actually productize this. So having the checkpoints at different stages of the development. However, I think that MLOps is something that you need to, and the best practice is something you need to take into account from the beginning. So if you first are doing like a POC and then gradually moving towards productization, it doesn't mean that only when you are actually taking something into production, then you start adopting these good practices and these like DevOps mindset and good software development practices. I think they should be taken into account like in every step of the project.
So you start to do it like it will go into production,
Yes.
even though you don't know yet, but
Yes.
you have the mindset that this will go into production.
Exactly, yeah. And it will be so much easier to then productize it later on if you have that mindset from the beginning.
Okay, so obviously very different environments, I think. So what kind of teams do you have working around this? I don't suspect that it's at least JP doesn't have just one team working there, you must have more in there, but what kind of teams are in your organization working around this area? Like, do you have data science team separately? Do you have some engineering team separately? Do you have ops team, or is it more combined, or how does it work for you guys? Maybe starting from Hanna.
Yeah, well, we have these 30 plus data scientists working around the company, but everybody part of the central Financialy center of expertise. Then we have data engineers dedicated to different business areas, and then we have a central team of data engineers. And the central team of data engineers, they are taking care of our data lake, and also in their environments, that's where the ML applications are running. And it used to be that those were the people who were the first line of support, that because they have full visibility to the environments. But then it's actually the data scientists who then are able to fix things because they have been implementing those machine learning applications. So nowadays the data scientists have better visibility there. But we are still moving towards having like small cross-functional teams who own the products and who are the ones who then monitor them and who have been involved from the beginning to the end, so they know what to do if there's something.
From line organization perspective, like when we started, well, years ago, like the primary motivation was to get like critical mass on the competence center, and like in practice it meant that it was like data science, data engineering together, just to be able to get like more people that are able to support each other. With hindsight, we have been always a bit too lean on the data engineering side. It would have been better, it would have like closer to 50-50, it never was 50-50, more data science heavy, but it would have been better. But then again, for all the students, like that's the first tip here, that like the data engineering, like way more positions open than on the data science, and the university people don't guide you for the right direction. That's like where the cool stuff is done and where the high salaries are done. So that's my tip. Yeah, recruiting as well. I'm sure we are all recruiting in that area, but like...
Yeah, I think you said earlier on that data science is overrated and data engineering underrated. I think this is exactly the point here that you're making.
So we were tiny bit under-resourced on the data engineering side, and then when things growed, like the role of domain expertise is like all the time growing, and now we are like when there are more people splitting it into domain-specific teams, so that like the domain know-how of the different manufacturing processes and telco processes and so on accumulates. But this is only the line organization side, and all the real work is done on the projects. And a bit like following up on the role of the DevOps, it's the more traditional parts of the software engineering that after the very early stages of the project exploration are dominating, and we are not pooling those into the same organization. We do like project-based product development, and typically the software engineering resources are on the product lines in the different business areas. So it's kind of matrix setup how the project team is formulated.
Yeah, so the way things are organized at Kone is somewhat similar, but so first of all, we draw a line between sort of our services R&D analytics, which is mainly dealing with making predictions about things that affect our elevators, and then my team, which focuses more on the business processes, about how to sort of generate business outcomes. But regardless of what we're working on, I think we're organized in roughly the same way, that you need to organize around your value stream. sort of align along the process, and then typically you'd have one team that manages one product or at the most 2 products. And as Hanna was saying, so the only way to do that is to have a cross-functional team that is both doing development and operations. So small cross-functional teams seems like that is a good pattern that we can all adopt. But then the problem with having these small cross-functional teams is that they do one thing, and they do one thing really well, which is to generate that value out of that value stream. But it also means that we need to have sort of platform teams that support these sort of stream-aligned teams as well. And for example, you could have a data platform team that is actually producing reusable data sets in order to train these machine learning models. Or you could have a team that manages your Databricks deployment, for example, which means that your team is not putting their efforts into sort of setting up infrastructure and things like that. So I think a combination of strong platform teams that focus on reusable data sets, and then you would have stream-aligned teams that are focused on delivering value. So that is how we're organized. And then the other thing is that I would like to address is also when you're talking about cross-functional, we need sort of, I would say that you cannot have data scientists and data engineers alone, and which is why I sort of make the case for having a separate role called a machine learning engineer, who's somewhere in between. Because from what I've noticed, like you have data scientists who come from an academic background and who are really good at sort of analyzing and producing solutions to problems, but don't necessarily have the software engineering abilities to be able to like take that into production. On the other hand, you have data engineers who have like a very good knowledge of how to produce, how to optimize SQL queries, and how to generate good data sets, but then they typically don't have any understanding about the machine learning models that they're training and so on. So really, there is a gap in the market for this ML engineering as a role as well.
Interesting that you
that's like excellent emphasis, and it helps with the data engineering shortage as well, and it also bridges towards the software development practices. So for young people considering what to emphasize, like that is, especially if you have a bit like software development background, that's like a very spot on focus.
Even though I'm an old school data scientist, I have to a bit agree with you guys there, but data science is still cool. Trying to keep this up. Interesting that you all mentioned this small teams around the one product, I would say. I think you all mentioned also, or at least I know that you guys are using Databricks. So what is the role of tooling in bringing these tools or different roles together?
Can I start? Okay. Yeah, so I think the tooling at the end of the day is focused towards you being able to sort of automate away the boring stuff. So if you find yourself doing something more often that is not directly generating value, chances are the tooling should take care of that. And that's kind of where sort of, we at least at Kone use Databricks as a tool for that. And the main reason for that is you sort of bring the worlds of data engineering, ML engineering, and data science all in under one sort of ecosystem. And then so you can have your data scientists, build tables that your data engineers build tables that data scientists then use, to train their models, and then you have your ML engineers, sort of orchestrating those pipelines and logging all of your model metrics and into a model registry, all in one place. So I think tooling is that the main focus there is that it sort of makes things easier and allows you to focus on value creation rather than the boring stuff.
Same from historical perspective. 5 years ago or something, like we had probably in Finnish standards a pretty decent like in-house data lake setup with some of the, I don't think it was worse than others, probably like reasonable state of the art of the time, and then the people who were doing use cases on top of that in our employee satisfaction surveys, were giving the rating on the tooling from 0 to 100 rating. That was something in the 40s and 50s, and that was the big red mark. And I personally got pretty annoyed listening that like my team members are fighting against like this system is crashing and this is out of memory and this capacity is not available and this work is again delayed to next week because of this, that and the third reason on that side. And that, well, I'm a bit biased towards the cloud for other reasons as well, but that was the time when I started to like push that we need to have the especially on the telco side, the key data available and like standardized environment, and we took Databricks at those early stages into use, and after that it has been spreading naturally, and in the last few years to the tool satisfaction has been in the 90-95 rating, that is like where it should be. So for me it's about like allowing the people to concentrate on the job to be done instead of fighting against the tooling. And for us, it was a big leap over the in-house stuff that we had, and I believe others had roughly similar quality in-house tooling. I don't believe ours was any worse than usual.
What about OP?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, and yeah, the situation here is good. Definitely the common tools and templates, and maintaining those instead of maintaining a lot of different types of tools here and there makes things a lot easier.
You mentioned templates earlier on also. What kind of templates do you create? Do you create like templates of this is how you do a case that is easy to take into production, or have the MLOps work on that, or how do the templates help there?
Yeah, well, different kinds. We have that kind of templates that this is how you implement this stuff, having the same structure, and also kind of a shared deployment pipeline. So you just insert your values here, and it will automatically create the deployment pipeline in a similar fashion as in all the different cases. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time, and you have something that is already tested and you know it works.
And when it's done like that, then also the ops team or whoever is doing the MLOps can know that I can do this because it's been done with this template, I
exactly.
suppose. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think standardization is key to all of this. So the more standardized your solution architectures are, the easier they are to maintain.
Yep. Jipe, you mentioned about the end-to-end and integration there. So what about testing? Does that help you to create those difficult environments, like testing, unit testing and these kind of things, or what helps there?
Well, how I see that, and maybe that's a bit like personal bias, but that's in my view more like how you do the product development in general and what are the good software development practices. Then there are additional complexities and nuances that are coming from the data science part. So, well, what you should add to be able to know if your incoming data is still something roughly similar to what you have been seeing when you were training the model, and do you have data drift or model drift or something like that. But still, I would say that most of the testing practices should be coming from the good software engineering side, and then you add some nuances, but there is no need to try to reinvent the wheel for the data science part. And like good for the product development projects or programs, it's important to have like strong enough project leadership that they like are able to set the quality standards for themselves, and really like no one outside should be enforcing that. It should be the team itself that is like setting the quality limits and so on. But of course that requires some level of seniority for at least some of the team members.
And ownership,
Yeah.
like this is our stuff.
Yeah.
What about Neelabh? Do you have any views on this, like testing, data drift, model validation, model testing when it's in production?
Yeah. So when it comes to testing, I think you need to have like multiple levels of testing. So you start, of course, with unit testing. So I mean, split your code up into functions and test each function. Start with that, and then of course we go into the world of like end-to-end testing, where sort of you start to then make sure that the behavior from one stage of the pipeline to the next actually is as it should be. And then lastly, sort of one interesting sort of real world problem that a lot of people would face that I've noticed that I ran into recently is that like most of the data science solutions that we develop actually read data from some kind of line of business solution, like application, and then you would like generate your scores, and then you would write back into that same that same line of business application. And what is interesting is that the way our environments are set up is that sort of you would want to do testing and you'd want to use the QA environment, but typically your QA environment would not have the kind of production data that you need to actually train the model. So it seems like we need to come up with some kind of slightly modified architecture that is specific for ML solutions that is not applicable to like integration test or standard software integration testing. So that was an interesting solution.
Yeah, we have also recognized the need for this kind of staging or pre-production environment where you have the production data available, but which is not the actual production, because some things you just cannot test if you don't have access to the actual real data.
Sometimes you can make it so that you can read-only access the production data, but you cannot write back there, but you write into
Yeah, but that's one way to kind of implement this pre-production environment.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know whether our approach is elegant or not, but we are typically either allocating from our data platform or just plain old duplicating data from other sources for the development stage and then playing around like simulating with historical situations, but like try to have as real setup of the data, even if that would be last year's data or last month's data or something like that, but like for the product team that they don't try to guess what the data looks like, but they can actually like work with sample of it.
Yep.
Yeah, in a bank that doesn't really work because you cannot really have production data in your development environment, so you need to come up with something else.
You can do simulated data, right?
Yes, that's one option.
Yep. I think we have time for a couple of questions from the audience, if there are some questions, or is there anything from the online? I don't know. Here's one.
Hello. Given your requirements set by the domains you are working in, what is your view on the definition of done for an ML project? And in particular, maybe to give a bit more context, what would be the top 5 things you would like to be sure of whenever you're saying, okay, this project can be said to be concluded and start in the operational mode?
To me, if you ask me, like it is never done. But you can say that. But if you want to know where to stop, then I think the real question that you need to answer yourself is that does the solution that I just developed solve the business problem that I set out to solve, right? So if let's say you're building a standard textbook example of a churn model, if the solution you developed sort of it causes your churn rate to go up instead of down, then clearly it is not done. But if you produce a noticeable lift in your churn rate that quantifies it, I mean that produces some kind of quantifiable increase in your revenue, then I would say it is done. So I think doneness must be measured in terms of the goals of the business.
Well, if I take this product-oriented viewpoint, well, first half done is when you actually have the field trial and happy customer from that, and then you have the first real customer, and then you fine-tune both the functionality and the deployment capabilities and hopefully have other customers, and in the kind of industries we are serving, if the product is good to be in production use, the life cycle is probably more than 1 decade before it is obsolete, or in that range of time in any case. So, like,
do you update the models during that time? When do you decide to update the model?
So almost always they are so that it's a running time window and retrained from the history so far. So from that perspective inbuilt, but like being able to say that if it was successful so that it actually goes forward as a product, then hey, now we can get rid of this, that is a long time. So.
Data quality has been mentioned, and like the production quality data. How do you ensure that the upstream data providers don't accidentally like drop columns, or do you have like a mechanisms of protecting changes in the, or semantic changes in the upstream data?
Yeah, well, input data tests, testing the schema and the contents, the distributions, and also output data tests, so that we make sure we don't provide some rubbish to the downstream systems.
Yeah, I think the key here is contract-based interfaces. So you should have like a set of tests that you run on the data before you accept it. Otherwise, and if they drop a column, you can say that I wrote this test that says that expects this column is not there, and then you can throw it over the fence again.
We could probably do more systematic work here, but typically we are pretty directly connected in the source operational system. So in telco side, it's the Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei kind of items, and of course they have version changes, and yes, the version changes break things every now and then, but then again the operators know that when there are version changes they expect there will be problems, so that's like business as usual in that industry. And then on the manufacturing side we are typically pretty close once again, and might be even directly connected to the actual like equipment and measurement devices and so on. So like it's again, when the physical setup is changing, yes, there's a high risk that there will be like something happening in our side, or if the software versions are changing or something, but it's still like reasonably close from the origin of the source to where we are processing.
Okay, is there still one more question? Okay, let's one quick one.
What kind of particular MLOps instruments you are used to use? I mean, kind of MLOps, MLflow, Kubeflow, or something else? Or you are completely good with, let's say, like GitHub actions, like testing and pipelines that are made just in this way, and it's quite enough for your type of tasks? Thank you.
Well, for example, we use MLflow, and then these traditional like CI/CD pipelines.
For the work that we can do on the Databricks side, MLflow is like preferred, but then on the especially on the telco side, where these private cloud setups, Kubeflow is, let's say, more mainstream in that side. So like between those two, it depends on the like infra setup.
Yeah, I think you need to look at this in terms of sort of your model management tool, which is for most people the industry standard is MLflow. You need to look at your sort of CI tool, which is GitHub Actions or something, and then you've forgotten your workflow orchestrator, because your CI tool is not a workflow orchestrator. You need to have something like Airflow or Daxter or something like that to be able to like schedule your distributed, your workflows basically, so that you do one job after the other in sequence. Okay, thank you. Last quick question for everybody. If there is one thing you would tell, if some companies now starting on ML ops and getting into this phase, so what would be the one thing that you would give as an advice, or maybe just a surprise learning for you guys?
Well, I must say that when I started as a data scientist coming from academia, it was data science for me, and I didn't care that much about the software development practices, but the longer I've been in the field, I think they are really important. So the code reviews and the phased deployment to development test, pre-prod production, etc. They are the key for good quality data science.
Yeah, so having done MLOps for a little while now, I don't know if you've all seen that picture. It became quite famous where there's this little black box in the middle that says ML model, and then there's a bunch of gray boxes around it talking about the infrastructure and all of that. It's from a 2015 paper by some data scientists at Google. You can look that up. But what I learned so far is that picture is not to scale. So the ML model itself is much smaller, and then the bigger boxes are much bigger and scarier. So, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
maybe less for the MLOps and more for the data science in general. That like focus on the problem and value that can be created, and less on the fancy methods. And if you can do the same thing with easier methods, the easier methods are way better. Not maybe as cool as lines in CV or in LinkedIn post, but still, if you get the job done with easier approach, it is higher value for the business that way.
I think that's a perfect comment to end this panel. Thank you, everybody, and give a round of applause. And as a thanks for you guys, there's a bit of a, we don't know if you like tea or coffee. I would go for the coffee myself, but thank you.
Thanks.
For the panel. And thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's maybe we have time for a small break now. So we'll start the next item at 7 sharp.
Sounds good. Okay, I think it's now time to get back and start to get ready for the next panel. And before the next panel, we have Juuso giving us an introduction on the topic of citizen data science. So please grab your drinks and foods and get back in here and listen to what Juuso has to say.
So I think I'm going to start. I mean, people are still moving towards their seats, but that's okay. I'm sure my voice will carry over. So the next panel will be about citizen data science, and what I'm going to talk about a bit here, just hopefully short, under 10 minutes, is to kind of present our OP's journey towards having this data science citizenship. Now, this started back in the middle of the pandemic. We started experimenting with a Databricks tool in 2020. So it was actually something that we had been kind of itching for already previously, but for some reason it kind of realized in autumn 2020. And I have to say that it was the most successful pilot I have ever been involved with. Not going into specifics, we decided to deploy data, but this is not a paid commercial, by the way. We are just a happy user. So we deployed Databricks in the beginning of 21, and at that point we had been discussing about citizen data science as a kind of a ironic topic. We didn't really think about very much, but with Databricks we actually realized first time that actually this is a tool that we can actually spread over to the corporate side. So you don't need to be a data scientist. You really needed to be a data scientist to use the old tools, the homebrew tools. Juhan is nodding. Yes, it was horrible. But with Databricks, it was actually doing data science was, if not exactly easy, it was entirely possible to train people with small effort to utilize the tools. So we started what we call the data science community inside OP. And there the question is, who is a citizen data scientist? For us, anybody who is using data is part of the OP's data science community. So using data to provide value, to dig out new values or kind of new interpretations of the world, to understand the world, the business, and so forth. Anybody who uses data, in that sense, is kind of a citizen data science, even if they don't do any machine learning. So we have there in the picture, we have the kind of full-time data users, some of those who might be called data scientists, some of those, we have a lot of mathematicians here and so on. And then on the kind of outer rim there's a bunch of other people who also utilize the data, and they need to be able to get value, could utilize the kind of find the value, find their answers themselves from the data, and those are the citizens. Now the next question was, okay, in order for us to make citizen data scientists successful in their work, what do they need? Well, they need to have the tools, and that's kind of what we started with. It kind of started from the realization and hey, this is a tool that we can actually utilize. This is what we can train to other people to use. So, but that's not the only tool, obviously. OP is perhaps the biggest SAS house in Finland, and there's a bunch of other tools also. The other thing that the data scientist needs, or the citizen data scientist needs, they need to know where the data is and how to access it. Now, this is something that we haven't really solved yet very well. We are moving towards it. I'll come back to that later. Thirdly, they need to have some training. So what I'm talking about here is the basics of data science, but we don't really train much about machine learning to the people that we train to be citizen data scientists. We tell them about data. We tell them that in order to do good analytics, you first have to find the question Identify the question first, and then you can start digging out answers to that question from the data, not the kind of the opposite way, because that's the usual error. Oh, here's some data, let's try to find some answers. Oh, they aren't very useful. Well, go figure. Finally, and most importantly, the citizen data scientists, as well as data scientists themselves, they need to have support. They need to have peers to talk with, to ask questions about the data, or sometimes also ask questions about, okay, what clustering algorithm should I use? Never heard that question, by the way. So it's more about data, understanding how to do it, and of course, why doesn't this bloody thing work is a typical question. But they need to have the support. Now, this is our journey so far. So we started in 2020 with the Databricks pilot. Kind of, we didn't have the thing called citizen data science back then, but that kind of led to the concept of citizen data science at OP. We did have the cloud analytics platform, which was our data lake and our analytics environment. So then we had the Databricks launch or general availability of Databricks inside OP. And I have to stress that it was general availability. We let everybody utilize Databricks if they want. That's one of the nice things about Databricks. You don't have to buy. We didn't have to buy 10,000 licenses for OP. We just have the Databricks license, and we pay by usage. So we kicked off the Citizen Data Science Initiative in the end of March, and then had the kind of full year 21 packed with events, trainings. We built up tools, templates, and so forth, ending the year with what was supposed to be a big event, the data science exhibition, but then the corona things kind of kicked in again just before Christmas, and we had an online event, and that was not very big as such. But anyway, lots of events, lots of people participating in those events. We initially thought about, okay, let's do a target. Let's have if we have 150 people participating in these events, and then we are pretty good. We had more than 1,000. More about the numbers in a bit, but this year we have investigated or spent a lot of time on data catalogs, kind of finding a solution for finding the data question. Piloted Data Hub, the open source data catalog solution, and then starting from next year, we are kind of revamping our data lake into what we call the OP data platform, which will include the Data Hub as a data catalog. It will also have a lot more professional governance processes and so forth. That's not because of regulation. It's mostly about producing damn good data so that you can do damn good data science. Number-wise, we started obviously from zero. The data science guild, well, maybe we could include the financial data scientists there, so because they couldn't refuse. So we started with 30. By the end of year 2021, we had 370 people in our data science guild. By the end of this year, 450. I'm not sure about whether that's kind of a saturated result or because we didn't do that many events this year. But anyway, it's a pretty good number. Databricks users, we have currently about 100 monthly Databricks users, and our work is organized with around these data science groups or DS groups. That's where we kind of organize the who can access the data and which data and so they are basically project groups. In the end of 21, we had 18 DS groups. At the end of this year, we have 63 DS groups. So that's where you actually, I think, you see the most effort, kind of results from the effort of doing the citizen data science, because it's those are separate groups. Some people belong to multiple groups, but mostly those are kind of individual groups, just showing how the whole community grows inside OP. Now, this leads back to best practices, because those people who do data science, they also need guidance and best practices and so forth. And I conclude my kind of short intro here with a bit of a throw here. I propose here for consideration that the citizen data scientists do not need to do everything. They can concentrate on the simple stuff and not that much worry about the CI/CD pipelines or so. I'm not sure whether everyone agrees, but we'll see. Now I think we can start with the panel.
Yes, thank you, Juuso, for stealing most of my questions for this panel discussion. Yes, welcome to the second panel. My name is John Bailey. I'm Senior Data and AI Strategist at DAIN Studios, but I'm also a OP Finanssiäly alumni, so I also spent some time in this house giving trainings from this stage. The second panel now is going to be how to enable damn good citizen data science, lending to Juuso. With us we have Clemens, we have Sami, and we have Juuso. I think you can do a short round of introductions.
Sure.
I think
it's on. Now it's on. Okay. So yeah, I'm Clemens, head of data science at Sanoma Media Finland. Very briefly.
That was very brief. So what do you do?
That's a very good question. So right now, I'm focusing a lot on recruitment, unfortunately. But by the way, we're recruiting. Yeah, what I do. So I think my work, I would say, okay, I'll try to keep this short as well. But so we work in a distributed fashion, as others have also mentioned. So we don't call it center of excellence because we don't like that term. But same thing. It's a matrix organization. We have data scientists in different business units, and we are connected through having a central team to kind of bring the best of both worlds together. Yeah, and what I do is to try to basically make the team, achieve the best they can. So my focus is on, of course, coaching the team, but also trying to start initiatives like what we're talking here, about today. These kinds of things like MLOps, data citizenship, or then also focusing on data strategy. So how should we be looking ahead at the technology landscape in the next coming years, or how can we bring up maybe ideas and also literacy in the business units that they can think ahead.
Yeah, and my name is Sami Ahma-Aho. I work as a digital lead in data science and AI at Neste. Two main overarching goals that I have is to increase our maturity level in data and analytics across the different business units, and the second one being increasing our development speed in data and analytics. And obviously those both then touch the topic today and other topics like data strategies, and then kind of the different practices of doing data science and analytics as well.
Hi, my name is Juha Vesanto. Everybody calls me Juuso.
Yes.
We're looping.
So what's the daily work?
My daily work is much like yours. I mean, I try to facilitate the data science work here at OP in whatever ways I can. Meaning sitting in meetings a lot, talking about processes, dealing with governance questions. I've been talking to lawyers a lot. They are fun people actually, when you kind of get the idea, right? Yeah, that I also do some data science stuff on my own. I mean, pretty simple, but still I do use Databricks a lot for also monitoring our user base, for example.
Okay, thank you. Let's start off with a simple question. What is citizen data science? We already had an introduction on how it's done, apparently, but what is it actually? We can start, Juuso.
Okay, my answer to that is short. Citizen data science is whatever the people in our data science community or data community use to utilize data in various ways to dig value. That's citizen data science.
And I would throw in a provocative question that what is a data scientist first and foremost? So I think at the end of the day, you, in the business setting, in the applied data science world, you have kind of a underlying question that you're trying to answer, and then you're limited by your different capabilities of answering the question. And okay, if it makes sense for the individual then to add some capabilities to their skill sets, then I think quantitative skills and the skills of data scientists are kind of the logical pathway to actually add then to answer your questions. So I think it's kind of the addition of data science skills to answer your underlying questions, whatever they may be in your business setting.
Yeah, agree on that. We had a brief discussion actually before the panel about this topic, like where do you draw the line? And that doesn't only apply with data science, but with anything that like should everybody in the company become a privacy expert because we have GDPR now, and now we need to read through tons of legal text and things like that. So, or the same with like design thinking, as I mentioned, that is a great skill set, I believe, to help data professionals to like translate business needs, but at the same time, we don't want everybody to become a designer because then they should, like go study design and probably choose a different profession. So, like, I think to come back to the question, is like enabling people that aren't maybe native in that profession to achieve some of the things in data science, for example, but at the same time, we're not expecting people to become data scientists.
Continuation on that. How do you see the difference between citizen data science and citizen BI? So is there a difference between that? So do you really need to be modeling something in order to be a data scientist? How do you see that?
I don't see a difference, to be honest. Like for me, data science is broader than just machine learning. And I would just say, like, I mean, the term also exists in like citizen scientists, right? Like that's a slightly different thing, but like sort of public participation of people in like taking, for example, public data and like finding interesting insights or building tools that might serve the public again. So it doesn't have to be like machine learning or AI, whatever AI is anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a really like fair point, that what makes a data scientist in the first place. Is it that you're using machine learning, or is it that does regression models do? What is kind of the limit in there? And in that sense, I also feel that we shouldn't limit kind of the citizen data scientists as somebody who's then applying machine learning to somebody, to some problem, rather looking at that, are they using different types of the ways to solve problems like data scientists are usually using.
Yeah, maybe to quickly add to that, I think there is, of course, a different level of knowledge needed for certain things. Like you can start really simple by, like, the simplest thing is maybe you have an interactive report, right? Like we can drag a timeline and see how things change, and that's already interactivity, and you're a citizen data scientist if you want. And then, like, of course, building models is like a lot more down the road in that. So in that sense, it's not exactly the same, but I think they're part of the same sort of journey.
I would draw an example here, or give an example here, which came from yesterday. we had a meeting, evening meeting in Mäntsälä, in some place. And anyways, so we had a very interesting discussion where the guy who sat next to me said that, you know, I'm the kind of guy that who gets, when they get a Power BI report, they immediately find where's the export button, so that they can download the raw data, or as close to raw data as they can get from the Power BI report, put it into an Excel and start pivoting it. So they need to, you know, see the raw data or the rows of the data, and they don't want to be constrained by whatever somebody has put in the Power business intelligence report. And I was like, oh my God, me, the same. This is a bit provocative, but in my mind that kind of explains the difference between wannabe data scientist or citizen data scientist who has a data science attitude, that they want to see the data and they want to build their own analysis starting from the data. Now, what's a citizen BI then? Somebody who does not do that. They work with the reports as they are, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if we're supposed to continue with questions, but like it's just so interesting. I think it depends a lot, like there's different personas in that, right? And different like types of needs. And for some people, it's fine to do a certain type of participation, so to say. They want to like do limited set of insights, but they're not maybe comfortable moving beyond that because they don't even know what the implications of the data might be and what sort of conclusions they can draw from that. But at the same time, there are some people that like, they feel limited by those tools. And then I think it's important to understand like what are the needs of these different people and to give them like a point to like pick them up, right? Like to say that, do you know that actually you don't need to download that? We have Databricks and you can actually pivot data there, right? So, yeah. But that's where the support you mentioned earlier comes in.
Yeah, I think that's a good bridge to the question of these personas. So who is a citizen data scientist? What do they look like? What do they do? And why are they then involved? So what kind of different personas are you thinking about?
At least in what we see at Neste, kind of, I think it changes and varies greatly across different companies, but at least what we see at Neste is essentially that we have people who are, for example, researchers who might know already kind of the underlying mechanisms and the underlying phenomena of chemistry or other things. They might have studied kind of extensively quantitative stuff, but not necessarily kind of being introduced to coding, scripting, doing kind of the data science part. And I think that is then the typical things that at least we see.
Yeah, I think for us, we're at quite a beginning, at very, very early sort of stages, to an extent that like data citizenship isn't even like a thing. I mean, it's not a term, like if you ask people outside the data organization. But at the same time, it's kind of happening. And like examples that I've seen lately are editors in media, right? Like, there are a couple of people that are actually very knowledgeable about data, maybe because of their background and so on, and they've been previously maybe just hacking things in a not so sort of compliant way, and now with Databricks, also for us, it has been quite a breakthrough because we can actually give the tools at hand and give them the power to explore. So that's one persona that has been sort of like naturally evolving without us even having to like sort of encourage people. And then in like development managers. So for example, in our B2B department, that's a good example because for them, data is at the core of kind of what they do. But we have this bottleneck of like they need to go to analysts or data scientists to build their product, and many times it would be like completely unnecessary to involve. Or of course, it's nice to have a chat always, right? But at the same time, like we don't want to be that bottleneck. We don't want to hold them back.
Yeah, and just to be provocative again, I think one of the ones or key points might be identifying that if a person has a really complex question about spreadsheets or VBA, they might likely be on the route of becoming a citizen data scientist pretty quick.
Okay, you asked about the roles or
Personas.
Personas, thank you. So one type of persona is, I'm not sure whether that would be a citizen data science, but that's kind of persona that we have been trying to train here to have more of. The latest incarnation of, because you have been involved in training those kinds of people also, the latest incarnation is what we call the business translator. And he's the kind of person who understands sufficiently on the data science or data at least, that they can recognize that, hey, there's something that we could actually improve in our business or process here using the data. They necessarily don't know how to do it, but they recognize the possibility and kind of translate the business need into something that then another persona could try to solve. Of course, the best way for those to actually start doing it is to solve themselves. So if they can be also citizen data scientists, they can maybe take a crack on it themselves and start building. Even if they don't build it all the way through, they could experiment and be faster that way. That's kind of one persona.
And I think one persona not to forget are data scientists, because in the end, like, we're on a learning journey ourselves as data scientists. And I think one other thing to consider, like to consider here is, if you, like, this is all about raising capabilities, right? And if you raise the capabilities to a level that you can support like people that don't have that expertise, so that they can use the tooling, have access to like draw decisions from data, you also need to like raise the level quite a bit for the data scientists themselves, and sort of there is a big advantage in that as well, in a way. And data scientists themselves, of course, need good tooling and good governance and good kind of support to start with.
Continuing on that, I think we've talked about on a personal level who these people might be and why they would like to do it themselves or why they would not to solve the problems. But from the corporate perspective, why is this needed? So what's the relevance for a corporation or company to do this kind of thing?
Well, for OP, it's kind of, in a way, obvious, or I would say even I would actually say it's a hype thing, in a way, on a corporate level. Everybody's talking about value of data. It's the new oil or whatever, and we kind of riding that hype wave with our citizen data science stuff also. So we want to enable all OP employees to utilize data to bring value, and that sells very well on the top level. But of course, now what actually comes out of it? I hope what comes out of it is better knowledge about the data, because okay, I'm a data scientist by profession, but for me the science part has always been less significant than the data part. When you understand the data good enough, when you understand how it actually is created, what the value means, and maybe you can ask for support also, and so forth, then you can make the deductions simply based on the data itself, and you don't need any fancy algorithms. So if we can build that kind of capabilities into OP, that people can actually utilize the data, can actually get insights from the data, even if they don't do any data science, then I think we have really brought value to this company a lot, and our kind of propositions to the higher management haven't been actually any lies.
I see kind of at least two prominent answers from our company's perspective. One being that the actual phenomena that is being studied or trying to be answered requires extensive domain knowledge, and you need to be a specialist on it. So that might be a kind of far easier pathway to add data science skills to a person who already does know the phenomena well, and then add those skills. I think it's also in certain ways for different types of personas. Let's say we're talking about a person who has different type of domain knowledge, not necessarily so deep or so extensive, but let's say a controller or similar type of a person who works on the financial side of the organization. Then it might be the citizen data scientist skills might be acting as a force multiplier in a way, especially if you're early on in maturity in the organization in data science, and you're kind of limited somehow by the identification of the real kind of good cases around data science and what are the kind of the most fruitful or easy cases, and you want to kind of build that data not the data pipeline, but the demand pipeline. So that might be one of the things that you kind of are more able to leverage and increase the potential cases there as well.
Yeah, very, very good point. I very much agree on that. There's a huge potential in the fact that it's not like one expert group that now is supposed to like solve all the answers like in the good old days, but the fact that you're bringing like knowledge from very different domains, right? And they learn about data, so you raise the data literacy by default. And I think that automatically, like thinking about it in terms of data citizenship, automatically brings more intrinsic motivation to learn about data, because if it's not, like if you're in a data literacy course and you learn like definitions and then you go home and you study them in a book, and then what do you get from that, right? But if you have something that you can touch and something that you can build, that's super motivating, and that way I think people can like understand each other better. So, but I think the very obvious answer is reducing bottlenecks, because that's the most like short-term value. But the long-term value is exactly in this, like people speaking the same language, understanding each other, and it's similar to like to draw an analogy like. Computer science, when computers were a new thing, there was the same literacy kind of thing happening. And in the beginning, it was like, okay, we need to implement a couple of business processes, and you automate that, and then that's fine, right? Like we don't want to care about that. And people did not even foresee the potential that it could have if you would apply that in all kinds of different contexts. And now it's completely obvious in retrospect. And the same is just repeating with data. Like, I think the example that you showed, like sort of exponential growth of the data community here now, is a good example that you might not even foresee the things that people do with data if they can.
So it's about empowering people who want to join in, and also then scaling the capabilities, both from a pipeline point of view that we get more use cases, but also then more people are joining in and helping creating value. Okay, so now we've talked about what, why, and who. The next one is how. Probably the easiest one. So how are you currently approaching this whole thing? Let's just start with an overall point of view. We heard about you already, so
yeah, I can go. I guess where we've really started, and I think we've started multiple times really. That's the actual answer. So, but I think the correct place to start is to identify the personas. We already touched upon this, but I do think that the couple of the dimensions that, for example, you showed on the slides, kind of the different domains that touch upon the data science landscape, and first and foremost trying to limit that, okay, what are the things that we want to actually introduce to these personas, and also identifying the personas. So kind of grouping those, that is it kind of the demand pipeline that you're trying to increase, and there are people that are able to identify the different types of cases more easier, and they have more kind of visibility on the actual cases, or is it kind of these deep knowledge experts about the specific domain field? So that, at least for us, has been the kind of the initial starting point. Then at the same time building different types of communities around data and analytics. So for us it has been a little bit of a separate track, but at least I now notice that is a supporting element for those personas again, and then bringing them together. But eventually just a little bit already looking ahead. So I think the next steps that we need to introduce are these kind of really, really good tracks of how to learn, how to support those people. And it's not only about, I'm not only talking about different types of coursework, different types of online courses, physical courses, different types of subject material, also talking about support within the community. So how to actually identify within the organization people who can support those citizen data scientists. I think that that is a key component for us going forward.
Yeah, for us, I think we've been sleeping a little bit on this, to be honest. Waking up and realizing that we have data citizens, which is a good thing, right? Like there's people that are very interested, and we've been doing it in a way that we've been just encouraging them and giving kind of the tools at hand, but that's like not scalable, obviously. So, but I think still that's a powerful approach to leverage, because you have these people that, again, are intrinsically motivated, so they are kind of our champions, so to say. Yeah, and I think now the next question is exactly, and that's the point where we are, like how do we scale this? And this is exactly where sort of the previous discussion comes in. Like you need trainings, you need the tooling needs to be at the right level. That involves a lot of other questions around data governance that we skipped today as a topic. But you know, obviously, like you can't just open it up to everyone and say like, here, go ahead, like use however you like. So yeah, this is like the things that we're currently thinking about, like, and also where to invest, because in the end, like it's a scale of investing. Like you can take it all the way to say data ecosystems and opening up your data to other companies, and you know, but that requires a lot of investment because the level of quality that like, and the SLAs that you have to have in place are of course a different one than you have like if you have a small community inside the company. So I think we're like in the very beginning phase of having these champions and supporting them sort of more case by case, further in the BI side than the data science side. And now we're exactly thinking about like how can we scale this up through like more self-service and trainings and support tools.
And I actually have to say that I forgot in my answer one of the topics that you mentioned that I think couldn't be kind of enough emphasized. If you need to scale kind of this in a large scale, I think you obviously need to think about the practices in data science and the patterns and the anti-patterns of doing things. Are you keeping record of those internally in the company? Is that something that is available, A, to your data scientist, B, to your citizen data scientist? So is it that you have kind of preferred ways of accomplishing different types of modeling or forecasting tasks or accessing data and using it? Or is it kind of just the Wild West, and then it depends for the citizen data scientist that you're adding that who they just ask for advice or reach out to? I think that kind of those practices is a key thing.
Okay, I think we already talked about. Well, you can say something.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, actually, we already talked about communities. We talk about support. I would like to talk a bit about training. We do a lot of trainings here at OP. We have a thing called OP Software Academy, and it kind of provides internal courses on different kinds of topics, obviously software topics mostly. But there's also what we call the Data Tower, and so there we have a couple of courses. One is for basically a hands-on Databricks course. The other one is more kind of more general, like basics of data. Like, well, it's much more generic about data than simple data science and so forth. There's a lot. I participated in that course this autumn, and I did learn a lot. Then we have the ultimate citizen data science course, which is Tekoäly tutuksi. You might ring a bell.
Sounds familiar.
So that's actually, I don't know if it's by design or accident, it's obligatory for all OP personnel. It's a half an hour, online training course. Then they kind of interactive thing, and it's a very basics. You talk about data literacy. Now, the tekoäly tutuksi course is kind of the 101 on AI literacy, in a sense. Should we have a obligatory data literacy course for all OP personnel?
You can take a vote.
I'm not sure. I hate everything that is obligatory, but there's a point there. This data literacy is not part of the Finnish school curriculum. So I don't know. Maybe it's not too late to start at the corporate level.
I do think that you're onto something, definitely. If one thinks about the kind of the key challenges in doing then data science, much of those kind of are or touch somehow kind of how are you seeing the data? What kind of things do you see that might be wrong with the data? How do you need to maybe process it before it's useful? Acknowledging how it was processed. Does it correspond to the phenomena that it tries to depict in the first place?
And I think you don't need to actually make it compulsory because it's so hype, as you said, anyway, that people like want to join. So yeah, at least that's been our experience with the basic.
Those who feel forced don't actually pay attention. I mean, not even that they tekoäly tutuksi. I'm sure they drink coffee for the whole time, something.
Okay, I have a final question, which is actually a bit bridging the previous panel and this one, and it's a bit more technical. It's support for models. That's what I've written down. So if and when we have this kind of situation where we have citizen data scientists working around the clock, creating the most excellent of models, who owns those models? Who supports those models? How can you scale that part of the citizen data science?
Data mesh. Just throwing this in here. No, but I mean, I know it's another one of those hype terms, but I do think it's not like it's a good answer because it's basically applying product, ownership to data. So, and I think it's a question of scaling again. So if you have an organization where like, not that we have that, but thousands or hundreds of thousands of models running, right? Like that exists. Obviously, it can't be like all handed over to the data science team to own. So you would have to have a product owner model. And that actually isn't so different to any other product ownership with like in a software company or in a product company.
Yeah, I feel strongly the same way. But in regards to citizen data scientist roles and the activities in there, I think that I would little bit lean on towards what you had in the slide, that it touched upon the models but wasn't necessarily entirely overlapping the model side. So is it actually so that the citizen data scientist is assumed to actually put something into production? And that then goes back to that, okay, what is then the pipeline that you move stuff into production with? What is the process around that? I don't have a great answer, but that's at least the kind of the couple of the points that come to mind.
Yeah, we don't call it the data mesh, but we are strongly moving towards the direction where we try to build a data culture inside OP. We call them data products, and the point there is that people should take ownership of what they produce. So if they want to publish their data, I mean, if they do something in their home folder, nobody cares. It's their personal data swamp. But if they dare publish something on our OP data platform, beware, then they need to kind of take ownership of that. So, because we have seen too much of the kind of throwaway ETL building, where there's a business need, we need that kind of data. We don't have anybody to actually do it, so we hire somebody, do this pipeline, they do it, take the money, and the pipeline is left running, and nobody knows what's inside. There's no ownership, because the person who just paid the money and get it done didn't take the ownership. They didn't own it. therefore they actually, after a couple of months or a couple of years, it no longer exists, but nobody dares to pull it down either, because nobody knows actually what it does and whether it's useful or not.
Yeah.
The same goes for models. Separation between data and models in this sense is that data is the output of a data analysis, and the model artifact is what I regard as a binary artifact of mathematical instructions how to proceed from a given input to an output, and that kind of actually relates to us to the governance side of things. So when we have a citizen data scientist who wants to do something as a bank, but I'm sure the same applies to elsewhere also, we can't actually give them a free rein. They can't do anything. They can't use any data. We have a very strict control on who gets to access what data. Not in the sense that you would sign your name with blood or something, but more like, do you have actually a use for this data? Well, no, not really. I would just take a look. Well, you can't, because that's not part of your job to look at this data. And those kind of restrictions are in place for a reason. And the same goes, the same kind of governance principles we have to apply also for the citizen data scientists. If they work on their own backyard, nobody cares. But if they produce something that goes into production, that is used, especially if it's used by others and so on and so forth, they have to also, they are subject to those same guidelines and policies as everybody else.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Good place to stop this. Actually, are there any questions here on the floor?
Hi, I think all of you mentioned in terms of this data citizenship, the giving the ability for people who are not in the core data scientists, but they recognize the value of using data for solving some problem and then having the ability to do so. But have you also noticed that then that enables them to create data, not just to use it, but create it? Because then if they have, and it goes to what you mentioned in terms of data literacy, is that if they have a new business or they're creating a product or a service, they can recognize straight away, we should log some of this information, because in the future, in a year, maybe we can take something out of it, instead of a year later thinking, we have a problem, we have to start logging data from scratch. Have you noticed that also happening? Or?
Yeah, I think this relates very much to the topic we just discussed. So, of course, you could, of course, introduce a rule that, you don't produce data, you just base a decision on this, and then you have to delete everything. But obviously, that's not smart. And in a way, that's the same thing that, if somebody produces an output or a data set, let's say, that is a data product, right? Somebody will hopefully reuse it in the future, and it should be managed that way. So I think the same rules apply. That kind of depends where you are in this stage, but sort of the more critical that data set is, the more, of course, it needs to be thought, what is the responsibility that comes with it?
I think my question was more that, have you noticed them creating those data sets from the business perspective, understanding the value of possible value of data, anticipating it? Because I'm talking for experience. I was in a company where there were some manual tasks being done. No one was logging that. Those manual tasks, after years, you could use them to train a model and remove the human. But if the business people don't have the basic understanding of data and the capabilities of machine learning and data science, they will not start doing it before they realize the need for it. That's not just using the existing data, but can they start to create data, or have you not noticed that yet?
At least I can attest that we have noticed it in parts, and I think it relates to the general thing that when you start mucking about with with data, however professional you're with it, you might stumble across different types of interesting things with it that you didn't anticipate in any way. And I think that is also then something that I don't have a great answer for, but I would like to see it happen in a way that we would also have the kind of the general advice that, okay, please, if you stumble across a kind of an interesting phenomenon that or goes against something that was even previously thought in the organization that is a certainty, that please record it, please tell about it. And I think that is one of the interesting things, how to create a knowledge base around what is discovered around in citizen data scientists.
And it goes hand in hand with the literacy topic, right? Like you need to first understand what is possible to be able to question processes and be able to think about automating them.
My straight answer to the question, no, I haven't noticed that happening. I'm sure it happens, but obviously it stays hidden because, well, yeah. But that's actually one of the reasons or motivations for us to push for this product data publishing. So I talked about the responsibility comes with producing the data and so forth. We encourage people to take that responsibility. We want them to publish the data. Then at some point they actually start to produce very good data, hopefully. And since it's published, it's actually visible. And then I would be able to answer to your question that yes, I have seen it happening. But so far, no. Haven't seen it, I'm sure it happens.
As a non-panelist comment, I think data literacy from the point of view that you start to value data from a different perspective means that when you are typing in something in your systems, you know why and what the value is of that. It's okay, I'm just documenting. No, it's actually value that you're bringing here. So it's both ways. So you also try to create good enough value then from that data.
Okay, question from here.
Hi, you talked about encouraging people to take over data ownership. Have you found good ways to incentivize them?
Not yet. Any tips? We are starting our journey, really. It's gonna be, been talking about this a lot for the past few weeks. And usually, well, one of the problems that we are trying to solve with this is that our data sources are typically separate systems, which kind of are performing some kind of performing some financial function or so. And they produce a lot of data, but the people who sit on top of those systems don't, they care about their system and their system only typically. So obviously, when you ask about them, okay, we would need to have that data that you have inside your system, they will do it, but it's kind of an extra thing for them. And the big question for me at the moment is how do I incentivize those people to publish their data? What I try to think about is kind of what's the bonus for them in that would be that, first of all, if they would publish it elsewhere, then people wouldn't come to ask about for that data anymore because it would be available. And secondly, because usually those source systems are afraid to publish that data because the easiest way would be to hand out the internal database credentials, but that would end up being catastrophic because people would come in and do some silly joins and select stars and everything would crash. And for obvious reasons, that's not happening. So it's a big core for them to publish that data, and we need to make it very easy for them to do so. But how to incentivize them in the first place? Well, that's a good question.
At least I don't have a clear-cut answer. I'll just add that in some places I've seen when people have actually created and published different types of data, mostly from perspectives of marketing data and also financial data. And then those people have been kind of naturally inclined to own it because they have been so involved and so tied with kind of the development of the data. So kind of the motivation for them has been already there.
And I think it's a mindset shift to consider yourself not just like a data janitor, which used to be a term back not so long ago, but a product owner, and that is a totally different thing. Like they're very overlapping, but as a product owner, like your responsibility is like to think ahead. What are the needs? What is the life cycle of something? And that intrinsically, hopefully, is motivating. Like when you have customers, when you make them happy, that's a different thing than like, oh damn, I have this data that I need to clean up, and now there's even more people looking into it. So I think that in itself can be motivating if you do it right.
Yes, thank you. Question on the similar, so it's maybe have to do with industrialization. We've been talking about the same concept in many different words, but would you be able to put some quantification into how much usage is there in the so-called non-corporate reports or these citizen data scientist published reports as opposed to corporate reports? Do you have like examples of where actually business decisions are being made on the citizen reports, on the scale of that? Thank you.
I have no clue on that. Partially because we are still starting the journey. Hopefully in 1 year we would have a lot of those citizen data science reports, and so because they have been published as data, and we would start seeing on the usage also and so forth. I know from personal perspective that when I've done new data sets which kind of answer a need that I have, then suddenly there are people who actually have a similar need or are experiencing the same. So personally, I've seen that happening, but as to the scale of it, no, I don't think anybody has been able to measure that.
I think you also have your data scientists in the tribe creating these things, so you're kind of already answering that with your data scientists.
At least I recognize some cases where the end result hasn't been necessarily kind of a report. It has been some type of a quantitative model even. And in question has been already so kind of a critical question. It hasn't just been studied before through reporting, and because I think it's mainly because it has been also always then looking kind of backwards in the data and doing this diagnostic type of analytics rather than looking maybe a little bit forward. And I think in those types of cases, there has been, at least in our company, kind of cases where people have actually developed something that is like really, really valuable, a key thing that they're then internally using within their respective teams and internally. Yeah,
I mean, briefly, same, pretty much. So very hard to quantify, especially if you're that early on. But my feeling is that that there's more hunger than we're not even aware of, like what people can do. Like example is that we've been investing into like AI tooling for journalists and editors, so they can like ask certain questions from the data of like in predictive analytics sense, and that's really kind of taken up, and they're kind of like awakening and asking for more and more. And like if you sort of, I just think there's much more potential than we are actually aware.
There's one question from online. This is to Juuso specifically. Reflecting on the citizen data scientist efforts at OP, are there advantages to using the term data scientist as opposed to just citizen data analyst? Could the latter perhaps help improve clarity and the organization's understanding of different ways of using data? Back to the terminology.
Citizen data analyst. I really don't know. Somebody asked me several years ago, would I be better kind of
branding myself in my CV as an analyst or a data scientist, and I was like, who cares? I've since noticed that some people do care. There's a degree of separation between those. But for me, really, the OP data community and so forth, there's a huge number of people who are analysts or business report developers or data engineers or business analysts or mathematicians or statisticians, and they all pretty much do the same things, despite the title. So my answer to that is that as long as you are a data user, we are all part of the same family.
Well, thank you. I think we've heard enough from these fleshy humans. Let's see what ChatGPT tells us as facts about these topics, because of course this is where the optimizing people find their answers currently. So the question I posed for ChatGPT is, what is citizen data science? Please use business terminology. The answer is, citizen data science is the practice of using data analysis and visualization tools by individuals who may not have a formal background in data science. These individuals, often referred to as citizen data scientists, are able to apply their knowledge and expertise in a specific domain to analyze and interpret data, providing valuable insights and recommendations to support business decision-making. This approach allows organizations to leverage the collective knowledge and expertise of their employees to improve data-driven decision-making and drive business success. So I think they were pretty close.
So why did we have this panel?
And you also get goodies.
Joulupukki. Thank you. Kyllä.
Haluatteko sanoa jotain loppusanoja tai muuta? Vai sanonko minä? Huuko. Loppu. Well, we spent our time, despite having one of the presentations missing. So I hope everybody had a good time here. Thank you for being here. Please stay for another hour or so, and then we'll start kicking you out of here. But in the meanwhile, there's lots of food, lots of beverages available. Coffee, if you feel like. I think nobody has opened any of the wine bottles yet, so good. Let's start from there. So thanks for all the presentations, and especially thanks DAIN for bringing the Helsinki Data Science Meetup. You know, the history goes back 7 years almost, so let's hope for another 7 years at least.
And thank you, OP, for hosting us.